Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. Thanks for pulling up with George Guy. This is The Pull Up, the podcast where we have folks that come on, they pull up, and we talk about something interesting, hopefully something stimulating. And for all you who don't know, if you're out there listening right now and watching, the pull-up concept comes from something that we always say, pull up. I'm about to pull up. I've been hearing that since I was younger. Hey, I'm about to pull up. I'm going to pull up on you. So I started this thing when I was working out on social media just to have some fun to engage people. And I would say the pull up. And I would I would show the journey that it took for me to pull up when I was working out. Because I think people think that when we go places, we take it for granted what it takes for us to get there. Mm-hmm. So that became a thing. People started asking me all the time, like, I pulled up. And they would say, I went to the workout, I went to do this. And it really talks about that preparation. And so this concept of what we're doing here is to allow people to experience other people's pull-up, if you will, in terms of how they got to where they're at. And extraordinary people, they all come from normal circumstances most of the time. And we take that for granted. And so that's what we want to do. We want to highlight these voices, elevate them, but only to stimulate you that is out there today. So that's what this is all about. And welcome today because, I have one of my most favorite people in the world, right? She's awesome, right? Miss Tabitha Ervin. Tabitha, thank you for showing up today and pulling
Absolutely. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit about Tabitha. So I came to know Tabitha by her being at the Y. She was executive director at why is that? That is the why. I know it's in the community, and it was very Renaissance
Point Y.
And we have a lot of viewers that are out there, so I try to make sure people understand around the country. But your Y is what I like about your Y. It's uniquely fit in the community, mm-hmm. And what I know about you was you brought in this experience of really being community focused. Mm-hmm. I had never seen that at a Y before. But to know that, and now you've been at the Y for 18 years, and you're the CEO of the larger, the city for Y. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, too, when we talk about it, in terms of the structures of Y. People don't understand that sometimes. And so I've watched you grow, but beyond that, your passion, you wasn't ambitious. I may be ambitious, but I never got the idea that you were trying to look for the next position. Mm-mm. It was all about where you're at now, and leveraging that, and always professional and always community-minded. But you come here, you're executive at the YMCA. You're a member of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated.
I am.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Let me say that right.
Yes, sir.
Right. You're also part of Jack and Jill. You're the vice president of that.
I am.
President of the Human Relations, which is Metro, mm-hmm. Which is our way of, I know some people have different services in different communities, but they basically represent folks that are underserved.
Yes.
And make sure that they're treated right. I want you to talk a little bit about that. But you are what I call a servant leader. You're a mother. Mm-hmm. And you didn't put that on your bio when I asked it, but I happen to know this because we're both track people.
Yes.
And you have a track foundation. You came to the community coaching track.
Yes.
You were a track person.
Yes.
And so I'm a track person too, track coach. So we've had that in common. These are all the areas that I think are just unique about you and how you've gotten to where you're at. It's just a unique story from Pontiac, Michigan. Mm-hmm. I have family in Pontiac. I know what Pontiac is, and to see a good story come out of there, that's great. But here you are with me today. So how you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, it's the first day of spring. It's very nice outside today. So I'm excited to just have a good day and have a good conversation with you.
You know, and you say the first day of spring. Usually I've been wearing like turtlenecks on here, and I'm very conscious of that. So I wanted to wear my turtleneck, and I was like, no, it's the 21st.
Yes.
I can't do that. Not when I'm with Tab, but but, you know, you're at the Y right now. What kind of things are going on? Can you talk to people about the YMCA? What is that and that structure?
Yep. So I've worked at the YMCA of Greater Fort Wayne, here in Fort Wayne, for 18 years. So I actually moved here from Pontiac, Michigan to work at the YMCA, and I started as the program director. Okay. So my plan, and I'll just give a little story here, was to come work at the YMCA and then move back to Pontiac, buy my own building, and run my own youth programs.
Nice.
So I actually never planned to be here in Fort Wayne and to be now the chief operating officer of the Y. But what I
amazing,
do,
by the way.
thank you,
Yes.
like to say is that God had other plans. Tell him your plans, he'll laugh, because he will position you according to what you are supposed to be doing. So I will say my dream of opening my own building happened because I opened the Jackson Lehman YMCA here a little bit over 8 years ago.
That was amazing.
So I opened that branch. And so my dream to open a facility in a community happened. I wanted to do it in my hometown, but I was able to do it here. And so the structure of the YMCA is that we have various facilities that we call branches. Some Ys in some cities call them centers, but we call ours branches. And each branch has an executive director and an advisory board, as well as staff that run the different programs in the different departments.
Right.
Each department are their examples, such as the wellness department, the aquatics department, the membership department, youth and family department. And so we have sports department. We have staff that are program directors, managers that run those departments. Executive directors report up through a senior VP of operations. Her name is Erica Miller. She's been at the Y 25 years. Okay. And then she reports directly to me, and I've been at the Y 18 years. So you got a combination of about 40 years of experience, the two of us working together to support the leadership of this organization led by our CEO, Andrew Gritzmaker. And he's been at the Y about 3 years.
Sure. So how many YMCAs in the community like we're in right now, and that's why I think it's important for people to understand the structure. So you have like what I would call like chapters or of the larger Y. How many YMCAs are in Fort Wayne?
So we have 9, and the breakdown of that is we have a couple of larger Ys, we have our downtown Y, and then we have a couple of smaller Ys, and then we also have 2 non-full facility branches. So downtown in the Ash building, we have the Wygand YMCA. And then in New Haven, last year, 1 year ago, I opened a new branch, the Three Rivers YMCA in New Haven within the community center. And so we are always looking to expand our reach in the YMCA. Our vision is to become a top 10 healthiest community. And so in our mind, if we can expand our square footage and be within 12 to 15 minutes of everybody's drive time, they will be able to have access to programs, resources, and exercise that they can get at the YMCA.
Good. Now, I want to take people inside of what you do and what you are. When you opened Jackson Lehman Y, it's such a big deal, right? Talk about that from a budget perspective, the cost of that, and what it took. Because I want people to really understand what it takes in terms of a woman like yourself to be in leadership, to get to where you're at, and the amount of capacity that you had to have yourself. So talk about that.
So our former CEO started a capital campaign a few years prior to Jackson Lehman opening. We had purchased the land from the St. Joe Church down on the corner about 5 years prior to us opening the Y in 2017. So we typically do a capital campaign in the community, a feasibility study to make sure the community can support that YMCA. So we do lots of work in a community when we are opening a YMCA. And there's lots of data out there across the country about what kind of community can be at a YMCA, support a YMCA, because our programs are family driven typically. Even though we're a place where you can exercise and swim and play sports, we want to make sure we have something for all families. So I got hired in January of 2017 for that role. So I transitioned from Renaissance Point, where we met, to Jackson Lehman to be the inaugural executive director who opened that branch. So from January to when we opened in June, they built the walls, they put the floor down. I got to support picking out the furniture, how wide the doors would be. Hey, we need a handicap button here to make sure it's fully accessible. Hey, we want to partner with these different organizations to start these programs immediately. We did a campaign for staff. And so we had a whole hiring session where we hired about 150 people. I handpicked my immediate managerial staff to help me with the opening. And then after that, they hired a lot of the part-time staff. So it was a whole 6-month structure We had a temporary office building pop up in the church down the street, myself and 6 other staff people in a very small room, opening a YMCA in six months. We had pre-sales before we opened to give members access to membership and get the community excited. And I would say the weekend to the Monday that we opened, we probably opened 1,000 to 2,000 memberships that quickly. So the Northeast community was really, really excited about having a Y in their community. And we had the sign up on the corner for several years.
It was.
So people were looking forward to it. And I would say it's one of our very, very successful branches. Our 3 big branches are Jackson Lehman, Parkview YMCA, and our Jorgensen YMCA. All 3 of them serve about 17 to 18,000 people in this Fort Wayne community. And then all of our YMCAs total, we serve about 80,000 people currently in this community. And that's just Y members. There are probably an additional 10 to 20,000 people that take programs at the Y that are not members, such as summer camp, swim lessons, youth basketball, cooking classes, and so on and so forth. And so the Y in this community has been a pretty big deal. And it started as a small entity with a couple of branches, and we've grown to every corner of town, including we have a YMCA in Whitley County and a YMCA in Bluffton as well. So we are serving the greater Fort Wayne area, including now the smaller branch in New Haven.
That is amazing. And this is how unselfish Tabitha is. She took it off of her. Now, I'm going to bring it back to her and say that, first of all, the YMCA is a nonprofit. Everybody should understand it's a nonprofit corporation.
Yes, it is.
All of the funding basically comes from donations and partners and funders and those type of things. I'm a Y person, been a Y person forever. Worked at the Y for a period of my life, part-time and doing that type of thing. I've always been a member. So I understand what the Y was all about. But in that, I think from a membership perspective, we take that for granted. And I want to go back to something, and I think it's important. I didn't get a chance to talk about your education, but you really are public administration, human services. That's your educational background. Who would have thought that you would have been in charge of building a Y? That's essentially what you did.
Yes.
A bunch of people, huge budget.
Yes.
And opening that up, 2 of them in a city. And then, and if you don't mind, what was your budget? And I think that people need to understand.
So when we opened the Jackson Lehman YMCA now, 2017, so about to be 9 years ago, that building was about a $14 million building. Okay. Today, that same size building would be over $30 million. And so we fundraised a portion of that, as well as did a couple of different things to make sure we had all the finances put together to open the building. For the Three Rivers YMCA in the New Haven building, that was a relationship between us and the community center. And so that one is a little bit lower cost and lower barrier for us to spend our time in that facility running it as a YMCA, as well as offering programs. And so that one, the budget is pretty small for that smaller branch. For the Jackson Lehman YMCA, the budget at Jackson Lehman right now is probably $4 to $5 million. But incredible. I would say, as the YMCA of Greater Fort Wayne, to give perspective, our annual budget right now is probably about $29 million for all of our assets, all of our entities, all of our programs, everything we do in the Greater Fort Wayne community.
And I like what you said there, because first of all, the pull-up is that here you are, this person that wanted to work with kids and families and opening up, and now you've been opened up huge wise by, I would say, partnering with your ideas in terms of the larger why. But when you think about this, we asked that question about budget because I'm talking about your full capacity as someone that got into this thinking about human services, public administration, and now what you've done. So there's 2 things there. There's the budget, but the other thing that you talked about is the amount of investment in the community.
Yes.
$14 million, which is huge.
Yes.
What is the investment total that the Fort Wayne YMCA period has to the larger community? What is the total?
So I'm quite sure our investments are over $60 million. Wow. Off the top of my head, I don't have that because then I would have to calculate each building, each asset. And, we also have a summer camp and we have all these other entities. But over $60 million by far is the YMCA's investment into the community of Fort Wayne. And obviously, we have over 1,000 staff. So we average around 1,200 to 1,300 staff at all of these locations.
Yes.
And then about 100 or so people are full-time staff at the YMCA.
Amazing. Now, again, kudos to you and the work that you're doing there. Now, I tell people that we got to get back now to how this started.
Okay.
There is a girl and even a young boy that may be out there right now that that maybe needs to hear that story. And it could even be a woman right now or a man that needs to hear your story. How did young Tabitha develop into this person that's this executive right now? How did that happen? Tell us about Tabitha as growing up in Pontiac.
So from Pontiac, Michigan, very proudly raised in a 2-parent household by my parents, Willie and Rochelle Durham. My dad was from North Carolina and my mom was from Pontiac, but her mom was from Alabama. And so parents, very, very hardworking, but very, very humble beginnings. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until we all got into school. I am the oldest of 3, so I have a brother and a sister. And we were kids that grew up in a regular neighborhood. I wouldn't say we were an average family. So my dad worked, my mom worked a little bit. We had enough. We went to private schools initially up until 8th grade, and then my brother and I transitioned into the public school while my sister stayed at the private school, and she ended up graduating from there. My mom pushed education and Christ. So we were always at church, and we were always in school getting our grades, and then we participated in sports. So I would say I came from a hardworking background, well-rounded parents who wanted to expose us to what they could expose us to at the time. I probably didn't get on my first airplane until I was 17 or 16 in high school. I was on the robotics team, and we went to Orlando for a robotics competition. That was my first flight. So it's not like I had this
Hold on.
extravagant.
We got to talk about that. She just said robotics, and you just let that go. Now, I'm assuming we're around the same age, somewhere around there. We're somewhere around there.
Okay.
But robotics, which is people don't know. People come familiar with it now, but I guess around the time that you were, that wasn't a thing, right?
No.
Robotics.
No. So we had an engineering program partnered with Delphi Automotive, which was a subsidiary of GM back then.
Right.
So everybody knows GM. So I know I'm saying GM and people are like, GM. There are probably only a segment of people who are like, Delphi. I remember Delphi. Delphi made parts and different things for GM.
That's right.
So Delphi in the Metro Detroit area, Oakland County area, partnered with my high school, Pontiac Central Chiefs. Shout out. They have closed our high school since then, but shout out to the Pontiac Central Chiefs. So Delphi partnered with my high school for a robotics program. And with that, several of us actually became interested in being engineers. So
is that where you started?
I wanted to be an engineer.
Okay.
And I actually went to University of Michigan and majored in engineering for my first 2 years of college. What I recognized in my second year of college is that I did a summer internship at a plant, a Delphi plant in Vandalia, Ohio. Okay. And I shadowed the plant manager. And so I'm walking around the plant every day, talking to people, getting to know people, seeing what they're building, asking questions. It was at that moment, I was 19, and that I realized that I wanted a job, a career that I could connect with people that are doing things. I didn't know what that was. I just knew I wasn't an engineer at that point, and I wasn't the person who was supposed to make the things or be behind the computer creating the things. I almost kind of probably decided and understood that I was going to be a leader or partner of people at that moment in my life because I enjoyed my time talking to people, getting to know them and understanding what they were doing and how I could support it. And I was 19 and I didn't know what job that was. I just knew I had to change my major.
Wow. Now, this is a pull-up moment. And you're probably the third person, at least the third or fourth person that sat here and said that they pivoted when they went to college at some point.
Yep.
And I think all 3 of them were engineers, by the way. But none of them went to social service. They may have went to different directions. But what's important about that is you chose something else. And I want people to understand that. You were able to go to the higher learning institution, And through that, you learned about yourself. And when we talk about college, college is much more, and you and I both know this, than brick and mortar, going to school, getting your degree. It's where you learn about yourself.
Yes.
And you often change at least once when you get there. But here's what's important. You leveraged what had gotten you there, right? Mm-hmm. And then understanding that I can do with the skills that I have and what I enjoy to do, I can take my skills to a different level. And you learned that, right?
Yes.
And so doing that at first, I bet that helped you out tremendously from a studying perspective and also whatever. How did that help you in terms of being an engineer and having that type of mindset?
Well, I think the tactical way in which I do things now and the way I lead, you can tell if you know this story about me that I do still have some pieces of that tactical nature of the way the engineers work. I just happen to work in social services, so I've put my skills into community, influence, leadership, and development. But really, I think a part of my brain probably does work a little bit more precise and tactically like an engineer would.
Okay.
I just didn't go into engineering. And I'm sure I could have been an engineer.
Right.
I just decided to pick a career that would be fulfilling, that I knew I was being called to. And so usually when I coach and mentor and talk to young people, that is usually my conversation with them. Take some tests, do some personality things, but what at your core are you really gifted to do, and what are you passionate about, and what are you interested in? You know, we always ask that question, what could you wake up and do without getting paid? And I think that's relevant because at the end of the day, we all want to get paid.
Right.
But what have I spent my entire life invested in? And that's the change of community and people. Wow. I just found that through my work at the YMCA. I could be anywhere, but it's through the YMCA that I was doing that. And I'm not sure how I would have done that as an engineer other than creating things, vehicles or products for people to be able to do some life-changing things. The way that I work now, I can see the life change, whether it's health, mental health, physical health, and I see it through staff and buildings and programs that we do. So I see the change in people that way, and probably not through just a particular product that maybe I would have been supporting building as an engineer.
Sure.
So I think finding your passion and then finding the work, career, or job that matches that is probably key. That's key advice. Lots of people do a first career and then a second career, because maybe their first career was something they were good at, but usually people might graduate into a second career, which is something they're passionate about. I hopefully will be able to retire from the YMCA, but along this journey, I'm also able to volunteer in the community, be on boards, do leadership things. You know, I was leading the Fort Wayne Ink Spot newspaper under the direction of John Dorch. So I've been able to do lots of other things.
Not just lead, you were when you're
Yes, editor. Yep.
On top of doing all these other things you were doing.
Yes. I'm not sure how. I actually was having a conversation with somebody last night about how I was doing that every other weekend while also doing all these other things that I do. Wow. When people ask me how I do all these things, I usually say very carefully. I'm pretty organized. I'm pretty about my business. I pretty much get stuff done. You know, I can leave this conversation right now and finish an email. I was starting an email before we started. I'll finish that email and hit send when I finish. I'm kind of always on. Okay. There's not a ton of off moments, but I do find times to relax, times to spend with my husband and my daughter, times to travel, times to rest. So I have created some balance now, but I would say I grew into trying to figure out how to create the balance because of all the things that I do.
Now, and that's good to have. I mean, and you're involved in everything and you really care. I call you a true servant leader. But Tabitha, the little girl. And I want to tap into that a little bit because that probably explains what kind of things were you exposed to? I talked about you running track. What kind of things were you exposed to when you're talking about a young girl going into your teens? What was that like? And what kind of girl and what kind of exposure did you have to different things?
So I loved high school. I remember being in National Honor Society. I was on the track team, so I was a hurdler. I remember running the 800 one time in a track meet and struggling, and coach switched me to the 400 and the hurdles. And so I spent the rest of my track career in high school running the 100 hurdles, the 300 hurdles. I long jumped. I was on relays. Okay. I ran the infamous 4x4 to close the track meet. That was like the best event ever at the end of the track meet.
That's right.
I played on the basketball team. I supported our athletic director, and so I did some administrative things. I was actually in band for a little bit. I played the clarinet. I did some things. I was the prom queen. I got voted as the prom queen and all these. So I was a super, super participatory, active high schooler. And then younger than that, I would say my parents made sure to invest in us by putting us in things like dance, piano lessons. And we definitely were at church, definitely on Sundays and probably on some Wednesday nights. So I was going to a church called Word of Faith, which is the larger church in Metro Detroit right now. It's in Southfield. And there was a youth group. And our pastor, G, my sister actually just sent me a reunion flyer, like a 25-year reunion. But we had a very, very active youth ministry and our own structure. And so we would leave adult church and we would go with the youth pastor and do lots of activities, whether it was overnight things, whether it was late night things, whether it was ministry, servant leadership. And so I would say all of these experiences that young Tabitha had and that my parents set me up to participate in, I think drive the person that I am today because I had all these experiences as I was growing up. I don't know that I knew what it was going to do then, but I can see it now, how I'm a servant leader because of the experiences that I had, but also watching my mom pick people up for church. I was driving at 16 to 17 and we were like the church bus. We would go pick people up. I remember giving clothes away. I remember cleaning out our closet and giving people things, paying for people's food. Like I watched my parents do this kind of stuff for people. My dad loved to cook. He was always serving and cooking, and the joy and energy behind serving people with this delicious meal that he created and this sauce that he made from scratch. So I watched the behaviors of my parents, I would say, and now as an adult, I feel like I have taken on some of those things in my own way, right? But our experiences shape us, good, bad, or indifferent. Right. Our experiences are built to shape us, and I would say that kind of childhood shaped me to be the person I am now, for sure.
And I would bet that you now as, and I want to talk a little bit about your volunteer work that you're doing, Jack and Jill, Delta Sigma Theta, and being a part of Metro. Talk a little bit about that and your roles in that and why that's important for you and the community.
So the organizations I'm a part of, both Jack and Jill and Delta Sigma Theta, are true and near and dear to my heart. Those are places where I can serve and volunteer and support the community through their missions of supporting African-American youth or African-American people. So the missions of both of those organizations connect to African-American people in community. So I get to serve in those organizations and utilize my talents to support programming in the community, whether it's for African-American families or mental health services, things with social action and voting and those kinds of things that Delta Sigma Theta leads in our community. Volunteerism in terms of my board service, I am on several boards in our community. So Metro Human Relations Commission, I'm currently the chair.
What is that?
So Metro Human Relations Commission is our local EEOC. So if there is a case where a person feels that they've been discriminated against, whether it's housing or employment, and I look directly at you all, you would file a complaint with the Metro Human Relations Commission. And so the Metro Human Relations Commission will, along with their staff, investigate your complaint. And so I am the chair of the commission, which has an executive director, Nikki Quintana, and her group of staff, as well as a staff lawyer. And so anytime anyone out there has a complaint and feels that they have been mistreated, treated improperly or discriminated against, Metro Human Relations Commission will take on your case and work to resolve that case with you and the realtor or the employer or the landlord. Sure. So whatever that scenario is. So I am chair of that commission. And obviously there are pros and cons to everything that happens, right? People feel like they're treated unfairly, or maybe they feel that the due diligence wasn't done. Mm-hmm. But at the root of the organization is here to support our community against discriminatory practices in housing or employment.
Sure. Again, involved in so many different things. Mm-hmm. And you definitely care about this community. And I can see that based on how you were raised and how you were and what you did. Just one of the last questions I want to ask you is that connect Tabitha as a child and the work that in terms of, if you had some advice to give to people out there right now, because we are about stimulating folks in terms of their ambitions, their dreams, their hopes. We believe that, like I told you, that we all start from a normal place, mm-hmm. but then we become extraordinary, and you're extraordinary. What makes you extra? What was it about you to get to where you need to be at in terms of making your dreams come true?
So a couple things. I would first say thank you to Fort Wayne for allowing me to be an adopted daughter of this community. Mm-hmm. I'm not from here. I have been here 18 years. I've only worked at the YMCA. And so I feel like an adopted daughter of this community. I feel a part of this community, and my investment matters. I also will say that no matter how cliche it sounds, hard work produces. Hard work. You have to have a destination. You have to have a goal. You have to know where you're going and what you're interested in doing. And then you have to dig deep and work toward that. Funny enough, I've had a couple different conversations about the difference between somebody going to get it for you and handing it to you versus you digging in and doing it yourself. Mm. As we continue to change generations and evolve, young people will work differently from us. They will not work 1 million hours a week and just all these other things that some of us that are a little older have invested in our time and our careers to get where we are. How can we also think differently about success for them in the future because it will look different? And I'm also saying that because I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I'll have to see how that plays out with her, even though I'm investing these seeds into her that came through my parents and my experiences. But for me, for sure, in Fort Wayne, hard work pays off. And I have been able to see the manifestation of every single blood, sweat, and tear that I have put into this community. I have seen it play out, and I know it's God's work. It's not just me. It's his favor on my life and what he has for me. And I'm just putting in the work. And the doors of favor just continue to open. And I'm just really humble and grateful to be able to walk through them in a way that can show his glory, but also can show my commitment to this community, to programs, and to people.
Authenticity, folks, right? And there was a pull-up moment. There's probably a few pull-up moments there, but I do want to say very simple. Hard work pays off. What we see right now before us is someone who's purpose-driven, lead by faith, but it started from the fact that you didn't let anything come in the way of your dreams. Mm-hmm. And you were yourself throughout that process. Of course, you had some peaks and valleys of that. And I just want to talk directly to those folks out there. That's why it's a pull-up moment. Hard work pays off, but it starts from a dream, having some type of faith, and making sure you understand your purpose and working hard at that. And that's amazing. That is amazing. So thank you, Tabitha, for showing up today. One more question. This is fun. Every good servant leader that pulls up here has a theme song.
Oh.
Because every good hero has a theme song.
Okay.
I grew up watching Super Friends, so that's my thing. So what would you say like today? It doesn't, but it can be your universal theme song. But if there was a theme song that would describe you just for fun, what would that be?
This one is hard for me. I think I had to get a theme song for an award I won a couple years ago for the Black Business Card Party. I am secretly a fan of DJ Khaled.
Okay.
So I love the hype songs that you can kind of walk out to, and those songs that, you know, give or take the language, that just kind of get you hype. Because sometimes you got to turn on some music that gets you hype. I have currently been listening to a Christian artist named Forrest Frank.
Okay.
And he has a lot of different upbeat music, and it's giving a little rap and a little singing. One of his songs is called No L's.
Okay.
Like, I ain't taking no L's.
All right.
So lately, I have been listening to that song in the morning when I wake up, because I feel like the enemy is always out to get you, always trying to attack, always putting up roadblocks, whoever, whatever, however, people, places, things, emails, whatever. There's always something when you are winning where the enemy comes to kind of cut you off and kind of get you distracted. So I've been listening to this song called No L's because I'm not taking no L's. It doesn't matter what roadblocks show up,
Nice.
what challenges
so
come
dope.
my way. I'm not taking no L's.
I love that. And that is a perfect way to close. Tabitha, thank you so much. You're an amazing person. I was sitting there counting. There was so many pull-up moments today. I couldn't even stop you. And your life is just, it's probably a master class about preparation, and also a touch of class as well. So thank you for everything that you do in this community. I just want to say to those that are out there right now, it is intentional. We're time stamping this. This is in March, and March is Women's Month, and it wasn't by accident that I made sure that we had someone, an amazing woman. And I want to say that to those women out there, I know that by the time you listen to this, hopefully it is March. Shout out to you, and shout out to all of you that are dreamers, or maybe in a situation where you're trying to figure it out. You can figure it out with folks like their stories across this country, across this world, in your local communities of people that made it happen every day. And Tabitha Ervin is one of those people that have been making it happen for a very long time. And despite the title, she's an amazing person, amazing servant leader. So I'm glad that she showed up today, and I'm glad that you pulled up today too. And for all of you out there, we're going to be at you next time. I want to always thank you for pulling up. And don't forget, always dream and be extraordinary. Thank you for pulling up today. See you next time.